Market magic. It was a bright, busy day at the county fair market, and Liana had no plans to let Avery get under her skin today. Booths lined the green, full of bustling people exploring handcrafted goods and fresh produce. A live band played on the other side of the park, adding a lively atmosphere. I greeted a customer who picked up a couple of my small potted herbs. "Thank you so much. Herbs are great for brightening up a kitchen," I said with a friendly smile as the customer left with her new plants. Next door, Avery let out a small snort of amusement. It never failed. Every time I was at a market, somehow, they'd end up with the booth right beside mine. Avery sold gemstones and crystals and was notoriously late setting up, which I silently enjoyed every time. Today was no exception. "You're late," I teased, shifting my chair into the shade. Avery rolled their eyes. "Some of us actually have other commitments, Liana," they replied with a smirk, arranging their display of shimmering rocks and gems. Their short, dark hair caught the light as they moved, and I couldn't help but notice how put together they looked, as usual. I brushed off the thought, reminding myself that we were nothing but rivals. Our friendly competition resumed as the crowd flowed through. Each time I sold an herb or plant, I'd glance over, only to catch Avery deep in conversation with someone, enthusiastically explaining the supposed energy of their stones. We traded barbs in between customers, each of us clearly determined to outsell the other by the end of the day. A young woman approached Avery's booth, asking about a specific stone. Avery's tone shifted, earnest as they explained its properties. I rolled my eyes, not hiding my skepticism as I rearranged my herb pots to make my booth more appealing. "Do you honestly believe all of that?" I muttered as our booths had a brief lull in customers. Avery met my gaze, green eyes glinting with challenge. "Who's to say there isn't something there? You're in the business of nature yourself, right?" Our exchange softened, and we shared a moment of quiet laughter, realizing that maybe we had more in common than we thought. For the rest of the day, the banter grew lighter, and I caught myself enjoying our interactions more than I'd expected. As the fair wound down, Avery reached across the booth with a small crystal, a white jade, they explained with a wink. They scribbled their number on the back of their business card and handed it over with a grin. "Text me sometime. Maybe we can grab coffee or something stronger." Surprised but smiling, I accepted, my heart lifting at the possibility of getting to know the person behind the competitive facade. I slipped Avery's card into my pocket, my fingers brushing over the smooth stone they'd given me. As I packed up my booth, I couldn't shake the warmth I felt from our exchange. The day had been unexpectedly fun, and the memory of Avery's easy smile lingered, making me feel a little lighter. The following week, my phone burned a hole in my pocket with Avery's number saved but unused. I debated texting them at least a dozen times. It was ridiculous, I barely knew them outside our competitive market days, yet something about them made me feel drawn in. Finally, on Friday evening, after scrolling through their social media page, yes, I'd looked them up, I found myself typing out a message. "Me, hey, Avery. This is Liana from the fair. Still up for that coffee?" Within minutes, my phone buzzed. "Avery, I thought you'd never text. Meet you at Blackbird Cafe on Saturday." We agreed to meet the next afternoon, and the thought of seeing Avery somewhere other than a market booth gave me a strange mix of excitement and nerves. Saturday, 2 p.m. I walked into the cozy cafe, the scent of freshly ground coffee beans filling the air. Avery was already there, leaning back in a chair, scrolling through their phone. They looked up as I approached, and their usual smirk softened into a welcoming smile. "Hey, rival," they greeted, standing up to give a small wave. I laughed, feeling the last of my nerves fade away. "Still think your rocks are cooler than my plants?" I teased as I sat down. "Definitely," Avery said with a grin, then shrugged. But maybe I'm biased. We ordered drinks, and as we waited, our conversation drifted easily from market mishaps to our plans for the future. Avery told me about their business classes and how they wanted to open a crystal shop someday. I shared my dream of running a botanical garden, a place that felt like a sanctuary for plants and people alike. Didn't peg you as the sentimental type, Avery teased, but their voice held a touch of admiration. You've got a real passion for plants, huh? I shrugged, a little embarrassed by their attention. They've been a part of my life since I was a kid. I guess it's kind of my way of connecting with my mom, who taught me all about them. Avery's expression softened. I get that. My grandmother got me into crystals. She used to tell me they were pieces of the earth spirit. They chuckled, but it was clear how much that memory meant to them. Guess that's why I'm still trying to sell these rocks, as you call them. For a while, we sat in comfortable silence, sipping our drinks and watching people come and go. It was a different side of Avery, quieter and less guarded, and I found myself leaning in, wanting to know more. Okay, Avery said suddenly, leaning forward with a glint in their eye. I'll make you a deal. Let's switch booths at the next market. Wait, what? I raised my eyebrows. They laughed. Think of it as a challenge. You sell my rocks, and I'll sell your plants. Whoever makes more sales wins. I chuckled, feeling that familiar sense of competition spark between us. And what's the prize? Avery's eye sparkled with mischief. Loser buys dinner. Deal, I agreed, grinning. The next market day. The morning was already buzzing by the time I arrived, and Avery was waiting at their usual spot, setting up my plants on their table. I approached with my usual assortment of herbs and small potted plants, but I had to admit, something about seeing Avery at my booth, carefully arranging each pot and watering the plants, was unexpectedly endearing. They handed over their box of crystals with a smug grin. Ready to see how it's done. I rolled my eyes but took the box, peeking inside at the array of stones. Don't worry, I'll sell these in no time. Just you wait. All day, we traded glances and smirks across the aisle. Every time I made a sale, I'd raise my hand in victory, and Avery would return the gesture with exaggerated flair whenever they handed off a plant to a customer. A family stopped by my booth, their kids captivated by the colorful stones. I did my best to remember all of Avery's tips: rose quartz for love, obsidian for protection. It felt silly, but as I talked to the kids about energy fields and positive vibes, I found myself enjoying it more than I'd expected. When a lull hit, I glanced over at Avery, who was busy explaining the benefits of aloe vera to an elderly woman. I couldn't help but smile at how genuine they looked, so passionate about something they'd always dismissed. Eventually, the day went down, and the market was closing up. We counted our sales, and by some miracle, we'd ended in a tie. So what does that mean? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Avery grinned, gathering their things. Looks like we're both buying dinner. That evening, we found a small, cozy restaurant nearby, where laughter and clinking glasses filled the room. Sitting across from each other, our usual rivalry faded into something softer and warmer. It felt natural, like we'd been friends for years instead of people who'd spent most of their time competing. By the time dessert came, Avery reached across the table, their fingers brushing against mine. I felt a flutter, my cheeks warming as I met their gaze. So, do you still think crystals are nonsense? They asked with a playful smile. I laughed, shaking my head. I don't know. Maybe there's something to them after all. I paused, holding their gaze. Or maybe it's just that they've led me to someone pretty amazing. Avery's smile grew, and without another word, they took my hand, holding it gently. In that quiet, shared moment, I knew this was just the beginning of something more than a rivalry, something real. The next few weeks passed in a haze of early morning setups, late-night texts, and shared glances across the market stalls. As the holiday season approached, the market became busier than ever, and it was like a hidden language had developed between Avery and me. We'd exchange snacks and coffee, swapping quick updates on our sales, slipping into friendly banter between customers. One frosty December morning, I noticed something unusual when I arrived at my stall, a small crystal tied with a thin red ribbon, resting next to my cash box. It was a shimmering piece of carnelian, deep red with swirls of orange, warm to the touch even in the chilly air. A little tag was attached to it. For courage and creativity, just in case you need a little boost. Avery. I looked up, and sure enough, Avery was already at their booth across the way, setting up their own crystals. When they caught my eye, they grinned and waved, their cheeks flushed with the cold. I couldn't help but smile, tucking the stone into my pocket like a lucky charm. I was about to head over to thank them when an older woman, one of my regulars, stopped by to chat about her poinsettia plant. By the time I finished talking with her, Avery's stall was swarmed with customers, and I figured I'd have to thank them later. But the day passed in a whirlwind, and before I knew it, the market was closing down. Avery and I exchanged waves as we packed up, but I didn't get a chance to talk to them. As I headed home, my fingers found the carnelian in my pocket, and I felt a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the stone itself. A few days later. That evening, I got a text from Avery. Avery, got a surprise for you this weekend. Be ready at 6. Me, intriguing. Can I have a hint? Avery, nope. Just trust me. Saturday night. Avery showed up at my place right on time, bundled up in a thick scarf and beanie, with a mischievous glint in their eyes. Ready for an adventure. I laughed, pulling on my coat. Lead the way, mystery guide. We walked through the city, which was decked out in holiday lights that cast a warm glow over the streets. Eventually, Avery led me to a small park on the edge of downtown. There, among the twinkling lights strung between trees, I spotted a small pop-up ice rink. Music drifted from nearby speakers, and couples skated hand in hand, laughing and stumbling on the ice. Thought we could take a break from the market, Avery said, offering their hand. Let loose a little. I raised an eyebrow, feeling both excited and a bit nervous. You know I'm terrible at ice skating, right? Don't worry, I'll catch you if you fall, they promised with a wink. We rented skates and stepped onto the ice, wobbling a bit as we found our balance. I clung to Avery's arm at first, laughing as they tried to steady us both. Soon, though, I felt myself relaxing, getting lost in the easy rhythm of our movement and the occasional thrill of speed as we glided together. Every so often, Avery would twirl me around, and we'd both laugh as I stumbled, their arm catching me before I could fall. I hadn't felt this carefree in ages. It was like the weight of work and responsibilities melted away, leaving just the two of us, moving in sync. After a while, we took a break, sitting on a bench near the edge of the rink with cups of hot chocolate. The air was crisp, our breath visible as we laughed about my near misses on the ice. I turned to Avery, feeling a surge of gratitude and something deeper that I hadn't let myself acknowledge until now. Thank you, I said, my voice soft. For everything, really. You've made this year so much brighter. Avery's eyes met mine, their usual playful demeanor giving way to something more serious. They reached over, their hand covering mine, warm even in the cold. You've made it better for me, too, they murmured. I didn't think I'd find someone like you in a crowded market, but here we are. My heart beat faster as they leaned in, and I closed my eyes, letting myself sink into the warmth of the moment. Our lips met softly, a kiss that felt like a promise, a spark that had been waiting to ignite. When we pulled away, I could see Avery's cheeks were flushed, their breath coming in small clouds in the frosty air. They gave me a shy smile, and for once, We were both silent, just savoring the moment. The next morning. The market had a different energy that day. Vendors were bustling with last-minute holiday preparations, customers packed the aisles, and the air buzzed with excitement. But for Avery and me, everything felt different. We didn't need words, just a smile, a glance, a brush of hands as we helped each other set up. My fingers found the carnelian stone Avery had given me, and I felt that same warmth return, grounding me. As the market wound down that day, Avery caught my eye and gestured to the small cafe down the street. We packed up quickly and headed over, sliding into a booth by the window. This time, there was no pretense of rivalry, no need to impress or outdo each other. "I've been thinking," Avery said, stirring their coffee. "What if we combined forces next year?" I looked up, surprised. "You mean a joint booth?" They nodded, a glint of excitement in their eyes. "Think about it. Crystals and plants, it's like they belong together. Earthy, natural, calming. We'd be unstoppable." I grinned, the idea sparking in my mind. "People would love it," I agreed. "A whole booth dedicated to nature and energy. Plus, we'd get to spend more time together." Avery's hand found mine under the table, their thumb brushing gently over my knuckles. "Exactly," they murmured, their eyes holding mine. In that quiet cafe, the noise of the market fading away, we made plans for the future, one that felt bright and full of promise. It wasn't just about plants and crystals anymore. It was about us, about building something together, rooted in friendship, laughter, and maybe even a little magic. And as we sat there, dreaming up our shared vision, I realized that the best part of this journey was knowing I wouldn't be taking it alone. The New Year's Fair. With the holidays over, the New Year's Fair was on the horizon, a big event that brought people from neighboring towns to our city. Avery and I spent most of January preparing, transforming our vision into reality. We brainstormed how to merge our stalls, experimenting with arrangements to make the crystals and plants feel like a single, cohesive display. Our little booth became a labor of love. We painted wooden crates, stacked them in artistic patterns, and hung fairy lights to create a cozy, inviting glow. We mixed Avery's crystals among my plants, setting polished stones on soil like jewels nestled in greenery. I added tiny pots of herbs, lavender, mint, rosemary, to bring in soothing scents, while Avery placed stones like amethyst and rose quartz near them, creating harmony bundles. People noticed. They stopped by just to breathe in the calm ambience of our booth. And with each passing day, the booth felt more like an extension of us, a perfect blend of our worlds. Fair Day. The day of the New Year's Fair arrived in a whirlwind of excitement. We had dressed our booth in colors of the new year, earthy greens and grounding browns, with accents of gold to symbolize fresh beginnings. Avery had even found some vintage crystal necklaces, which they displayed alongside the plants. As we set everything up, I couldn't help but feel that this was going to be special. As the crowd poured in, our booth became a hub of laughter, chatter, and curiosity. People marveled at our calming corners, where they could buy a mini plant paired with a crystal for balance and energy. Avery and I flowed around each other effortlessly, helping customers, sharing laughs, and sneaking occasional glances that only the two of us noticed. Then, toward the middle of the afternoon, a familiar face appeared, my grandmother. She'd heard about the fair and decided to surprise me. She walked in with her usual grace, her silver hair pulled back, her eyes full of pride as she took in our setup. "Oh, sweetheart, it's beautiful," she said, hugging me tightly. "Your plants look so happy here." I felt my cheeks warm with pride. "Thanks, Grandma. It's all coming together." She turned to Avery, offering them a warm smile. "And you must be the one behind all these beautiful crystals." Avery gave a little bow, grinning. "Guilty as charged." "I'm Avery." "It's lovely to meet you, Avery," she said, shaking their hand. "You two make a wonderful team." Avery's hand found mine under the table as we exchanged a glance. "We really do," they replied softly, squeezing my hand. After my grandmother left, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. It was like her approval had given me permission to fully embrace this new chapter of my life, not just as a plant vendor, but as someone creating something meaningful with Avery. The evening slowed down. As the fair began to wind down, the crowd thinned, and a sense of calm settled over the grounds. Avery and I finally took a breather, sipping on cups of tea and watching the lanterns flicker in the dusk. "I think we did it," I murmured, resting my head on their shoulder. "People really loved our booth." Avery nodded, their eyes soft. "I think this is only the beginning, though. We could take this further, you know. Markets in other towns, maybe even open a small store one day. A permanent space, all ours." The thought made my heart race, a place we could build together, where our plants and crystals could be more than just a pop-up experience. A space where people could come to relax, recharge, and feel at home. "I'd love that," I said quietly, squeezing their hand. Avery turned to face me, a hint of excitement in their eyes. "Then let's make it happen. Together." And in that moment, I knew we would. We weren't just two vendors anymore. We were partners, growing, learning, and building a life that was as vibrant and interconnected as our little booth. A life full of plants, crystals, laughter, and love. The next chapter. Months passed, and our little dream began to take shape. We scouted locations, ran late-night planning sessions, and shared more than a few cups of tea as we sketched out our vision on Avery's kitchen table. Our relationship deepened with each step, as we navigated challenges and celebrated small victories together. By the following spring, we opened our own shop, Roots and Resonance. A sanctuary in the middle of the city, where plants filled out of every corner, crystals sparkled in the sunlight, and the air was filled with calming scents of herbs and essential oils. People came not only to shop but to find peace and inspiration. And every day, I got to work side by side with Avery, building something that felt both magical and grounded. And whenever a customer asked about the origins of Roots and Resonance, Avery and I would share a smile, remembering that snowy winter morning when two vendors met at a market and discovered they were meant to create something beautiful together. Roots and Resonance, the grand opening. Our shop was finally ready for its grand opening. We had spent weeks setting up the displays, arranging plants, crystals, and every little detail just right. Avery and I decided to host an opening event, inviting family, friends, and the new friends we'd made at the local markets. The morning of the big day, I arrived early. Sunlight poured through the windows, casting soft beams across our displays. The smell of fresh herbs and lavender drifted through the shop, mingling with the earthy scent of soil and the faint, metallic glimmer of crystal dust. Standing in the middle of Roots and Resonance, I couldn't believe we had made it this far. This was our space now, a place that was uniquely ours, filled with life and color. Avery walked in, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers they'd picked on their way over. "For luck," they said, handing me the bouquet. I felt my cheeks flush as I took the flowers, realizing, again, how lucky I was to have found someone who understood me so deeply. Together, we tied the flowers with twine and set them on the counter. "I think we're ready," Avery said, looking around the shop with a mix of pride and excitement. The guests arrive. The opening began quietly, with a few friends trickling in. My grandmother arrived early, her eyes misty as she hugged me tight, proud of everything we'd accomplished. Friends from the market showed up with flowers and little gifts. By midday, the shop was bustling. Customers explored our displays, marveling at the plants, crystals, and curated calming kits we'd put together. Each calming kit was a personal creation, a bundle of a small potted plant, a crystal, and a handwritten note from us about how to use each one for relaxation and mindfulness. Avery had the idea of adding custom notes to connect with our customers on a personal level. People loved it, they smiled as they read the little messages and carefully chose which kit felt right for them. One woman, a local artist named Mia, paused by a shelf of succulents and moonstones. She held one of the kits in her hand, reading the note I had written: "Take a moment each day to breathe, and remember that growth, like the roots of this plant, often happens in unseen places." She looked up at me, her eyes shining. "Thank you," she said softly. "I needed this today." Moments like that made everything feel worthwhile. Avery's surprise. Toward the end of the day, Avery disappeared for a few minutes. When they returned, they were holding something small and delicate, a tiny, handmade charm. It was a miniature version of our shop logo, a simple symbol Avery had designed that represented balance and connection, with a leaf and a crystal intertwined. "I made this for you," they said, handing me the charm. "To mark the beginning of roots and resonance and everything we're building together." I was touched beyond words. I fastened the charm around my wrist, feeling its weight like a promise, a reminder of what we had created, and of the journey we'd shared to get here. But Avery wasn't done. They pulled out a second charm and held it up for the crowd to see. "To everyone who supported us," they said, addressing the guests. "Today, we're giving each of you a charm as a thank you for being a part of our lives and helping us create this space." A round of applause filled the shop as Avery handed out the charms, one by one, to our friends and family. It was such a simple gesture, but it meant the world to us, and to our guests, who understood the meaning behind each little symbol. The aftermath. After everyone had left and the shop was finally quiet, Avery and I sat together, exhausted but elated. The shop felt different now, like it had been infused with the love and support of everyone who had joined us for the opening. Avery leaned back against the wall, closing their eyes. "Today was amazing," they said, a smile spreading across their face. "And to think, it all started with 2 market stalls and a snowstorm." I laughed, reaching for their hand. "I couldn't have done it without you." They squeezed my hand, their eyes warm. "Good thing you don't have to." We sat there, side by side, our fingers intertwined. The shop around us felt like an extension of who we were, our hopes, our dreams, and the magic that had brought us together. It was just the beginning of roots and resonance, but in that quiet, peaceful moment, I knew we were exactly where we were meant to be. And as I looked at Avery, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together, planting seeds of love and growth, one day at a time.